Alfred-Maurice de Zayas is an American lawyer, writer, historian, a leading expert in the field of human rights and international law, a retired high-ranking United Nations official, a peace activist, and since 2012 the United Nations independent expert on the promotion of a democratic and equitable international order, appointed by the United Nations Human Rights Council. During its 27th session in September 2014, the Human Rights Council extended his mandate through 2018 pursuant to Resolution at HRC Res. 27/9. Alfred de Zayas is currently a professor of international law at the Geneva School of Diplomacy and International Relations, and formerly worked with the United Nations from 1981 to 2003 as a senior lawyer with the Office of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Secretary of the Human Rights Committee, and the Chief of Petitions. Zayas practiced law in New York and Florida 1970 to 74, specializing on corporate law. De Zayas' work focuses inter alia on the judicial protection of peoples and minorities. He holds a Juris Doctor from Harvard Law School and a doctorate in modern history from the University of Göttingen in Germany. He has written and lectured extensively on human rights, including the jurisprudence of the United Nations Human Rights Committee, the Armenian Genocide, the Holocaust, the U.S.-run detention centers at Guantanamo Bay, ethnic cleansing in the former Yugoslavia, the expulsion of Eastern European Germans after the Second World War, the invasion of Cyprus by Turkey in 1974, the rights of minorities, the right to freedom of opinion and expression, and the rights of indigenous peoples, and unfair trade relations. He is an advocate of the right to homeland as a universal human right, of the human right to peace, of the establishment of a United Nations Parliamentary Assembly and a World Court on Human Rights, and has been active on behalf of the Iranian refugees in Camp Ashraf in Iraq. Since his early retirement from the UN in 2003, de Zayas has become a vocal critic of the 2003 Iraq War, indefinite detention in Guantanamo, secret CIA prisons, nuclear pollution, asymmetric trade and investment agreements, and extreme poverty. A resident of Geneva, Switzerland, he was president of the Swiss Roman Center of International PEN from 2006 to 2009, and in March 2013 was elected president for a further term of 3 years. From 1990 to 2005 he was president of the United Nations Society of Writers and is currently the editor-in-chief of UNSW's literary journal Extempore Biography. De Zayas was born in Havana, Cuba. He grew up in Chicago, Illinois, and earned his degree of Juris Doctor from Harvard Law School, then a doctorate of philosophy in modern history from the Georg August University of Göttingen. He practiced corporate law in New York and family law in Florida as a member of the New York and Florida bars. He was also a Fulbright Fellow at the University of Tübingen in Germany and Research Fellow at the Max Planck Institute for Comparative Public Law and International Law in Heidelberg. In 1978–80, he participated in the German-American School Book Commission at the Georg Echt Institute in Braunschweig, and in 1980 published a long article on the subject of prejudice and stereotypes in school books in Aus Politik und Zeitgeschichte. During the course of his legal and academic career, de Zayas has been a visiting professor of international law and of world history at a number of institutions, including the Graduate Institute of International Studies, the DePaul University College of Law, the University of British Columbia, Vancouver, the Geneva School of Diplomacy and International Relations, the Schiller International University, Lausanne, the Académie Internationale de Droit Constitutionnel, Tunis, the University of Trier, the Santa Clara Law School, The Center for Applied Studies in International Negotiations, Geneva, the Institut des Droits de l'Homme, Strasbourg, the Felix Ermacora Institute in Vienna, the Raoul Wallenberg Institute in Lund, Sweden, the University College Galway, the University of Alcalá de Henares, Madrid, and the International Humanitarian Law Institute, San Remo. He has been member of doctoral committees at the Institut Universitaire de Hautes Études Internationales, the Universities of Amsterdam and Alcalá de Henares, and the Geneva School of Diplomacy. De Zayas regularly publishes op-ed articles and essays in international newspapers and media outlets, including The Guardian, Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung, Die Welt, Der Spiegel, and Bayern Courier, and the Tribune de Genève. He has made television appearances on round tables and panels for CNN, Russia Today, WDR, WDR's Monitor, WDR's Altrund Neue Heimat, Phoenix 3 Sat, ZDF Magazine, Südwestfunk, Baden-Baden, Bayerischer Rundfunk, etc. He has been legal and historical consultant to numerous television documentaries in the US, Canada, the Netherlands and Germany, including the Discovery Channel film on the sinking of the refugee ship Wilhelm Gustloff, and a Bayerischer Rundfunk documentary, Flucht und Vertreibung. He regularly gives radio interviews to Deutschlandfunk, Deutsche Welle, Radio Cité, WBAI, UN Radio, La Temps, Horizons et Debats, Panorama, Prensa Latina, and other media outlets. Scholarly work. De Zayas' work into the expulsion of Germans from their areas in East Germany and Eastern Europe at the end of World War II is credited with bringing this topic to the attention of an English-language audience from the 1970s. In 1975, he published a seminal study in the Harvard International Law Journal questioning the legality of the expulsion of possibly as many as 15 million Germans from their homes after World War II, invoking the Atlantic Charter, the Hague Conventions, and the Nuremberg Principles. The article was followed by the book Nemesis at Potsdam, which focused on the degree of responsibility of the British and Americans for decisions leading to the expulsions of these ethnic Germans. In the same year, an enlarged German edition was published by the legal publisher C. H. Beck, becoming a bestseller. In this book, Zayas took an interdisciplinary approach to the phenomenon of population transfers and examined the situation of the ethnic Germans from both a historical and legal perspective. De Zayas was reportedly the first American historian to address this topic. The Deutsche Welle reported in 2007, he wrote the first scholarly work on German expellees to appear in English, breaking what had long been a taboo topic. The German federal minister Heinrich Windeln wrote in the foreword to Zayas's book Anmerkungen zur Vertreibung, "It is thanks to De Zayas that the debate on the expulsion has been reopened in the subsequent period. A number of authors have drawn on the work of De Zayas. Thus, he has contributed significantly to the fact that a discussion of the expulsion is no longer considered taboo." As law professor at DePaul in Chicago, he organized the exhibit Ethnic Cleansing 1944 to 1948, consisting of over 100 poster-sized Watch and Schau, Bundesarchive and U.S. Army Signal Corps pictures, as well as paintings by survivors of the expulsion. It was widely visited and commented on in the Chicago press. The book is cited in scholarly publications and dissertations. His second book, The Wehrmacht War Crimes Bureau, was published in Germany by Universitäts Lang and Müller in 1979, and the English translation by De Zayas himself by the University of Nebraska Press in 1989. This describes some of the work of the Wehrmacht Untersuchungsstelle, a special section of the legal department of the Oberkommando der Wehrmacht, which investigated Allied and German war crimes. Examples include the murder of Ukrainians in Lviv by the NKVD in 1941, the murder of Polish prisoners of war at Katyn in 1940, executions of German prisoners of war by French irregulars in 1944, and the sinking of the German hospital ship Tübingen by the British in 1944. De Zayas was the first researcher to work with the 226 extant volumes. They had been classified documents in the United States and had just been returned by the U.S. National Archives to the German Bundesarchiv. The book was savagely attacked in the media of the Soviet Union and its satellites. Notwithstanding criticism from a few historians in Germany, these two books were well received in the academic community, are used in colleges and universities, and remain in print after 30 years. The book on the Wehrmacht War Crimes Bureau was the product of a 4-year project financed by the Institute of International Law of the University of Göttingen and by the Deutsche Forschungsgemeinschaft. The final report is available online. Civic activities. De Zayas was co-president with Jacqueline Berenstein-Wever of the Association Suisses et Internationaux de Genève from 1996 to 2006. ASIG was particularly active in the cultural integration of international civil servants into Geneva life, an activity currently carried out by the Geneva Welcome Center at the Villa La Pastorale in Geneva. UN Special Volume 606. Also organized numerous roundtables at the United Nations and other public events with a view to promoting Switzerland's entry into the United Nations. On the 11th of November 1998, ASIG hosted a conference at the Palais des Nations on Derniers dérougements à l'art de penser en avant les problèmes. On May 12, 1999, ASIG hosted a conference by Professor Peter Chop, director of the Institut Universitaire de Hautes Études Internationales, on la Suisse et l'ONU at the Centre d'Accueil Genève International. Activist for human rights and peace, De Zayas is a member of numerous professional organizations and non-governmental organizations, including Amnesty International, Pointe-Coeur, the Geneva Club de la Presse, the German Society for International Law, the Forschungskreis für Internationalen, and the Center Against Expulsions, the Spanish Society for International Human Rights Law. He sits on the advisory boards of several organizations, including the International Association of American Minorities, International Gesellschaft für Menschenrechte in Frankfurt, and is a member of the International Expert Panel for a European Solution in Cyprus. He is a member of the Asociación Española para el Desarrollo del Derecho Internacional de los Derechos Humanos, which, in October 2006, produced the Luarca Declaration on the Human Right to Peace. De Zayas has represented AIDH, the International PEN, and the International Society for Human Rights at roundtables at the United Nations in Geneva, including with Special Rapporteur on the Right to Food, Professor Jean Ziegler, with the Chairman of the Human Rights Council, Ambassador Luis de Alba, and with the President of the General Assembly Miguel Descotto Brockman. He is an advocate of the human right to peace and a signatory of the Luarca Declaration on the Human Right to Peace. He contributed to a book on the human right to peace and presented it at a symposium at the University of California at Berkeley in November 2009. On December 15–16, 2009, he participated as an expert in the UN workshop on the human right to peace established under Human Rights Council Resolution 11 Quarters. On February 22–25, 2010, he participated at a UNESCO expert meeting in Bilbao, Spain, as a member of the editorial committee of the Declaration de Bilbao on the Human Right to Peace, for which he served as English-language rapporteur, and reported on the results of the workshop at a UN panel in Geneva in March 2010. He endorsed the Declaration of Santiago de Compostela of 10 December 2010 and also participated in relevant side events of the Human Rights Council in Geneva in March, June and September 2011. While a staff member at the UN, Zayas was the founder and editor of the series Selected Decisions of the Human Rights Committee under the Optional Protocol. Before being named rapporteur, he was a regular participant in panels and roundtables at the United Nations, where he represented the International Society for Human Rights and PEN International. During the 4th–30th sessions of the Human Rights Council, he has participated in side events on various issues including the right to development, extreme poverty, the Millennium Development Goals, women's rights, self-determination, indigenous rights, Kashmir, disarmament for development, moderated panels on human dignity and gender equality, and presented the statement of Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon on the International Day of Human Rights, September 21, 2007. He was a consultant with the Office of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights in Geneva and a member of the Board of Directors of Unite for Rights, a California-based NGO which aims at a new human rights convention with effective implementation machinery to promote and protect all human rights, including the new enabling rights such as the right to peace, the right to truth, the right to a homeland. In June 2009, de Zayas published, together with Justice Jacob Th. Moller of Iceland, a handbook called The Case Law of the United Nations Human Rights Committee 1977–2008. The first chairperson of the committee, Andreas Mavromatis, wrote the preface, and the former UN High Commissioner for Human Rights Bertrand Ramcharan reviewed it in the UN Special of June 2009, pp. 18–19. It is staggering how much the Human Rights Committee has influenced the human rights jurisprudence of the world, as is striking from reading this exceedingly important book. For the outset of its work in 1977, there have been two Secretariat pioneers in developing the case law of the committee when it considers petitions from individuals claiming violations of the rights: Jacob Moller and Alfred de Zayas. Moller was the first chief of the petitions branch of what is today the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, and de Zayas was his colleague, who eventually succeeded him as chief. Every lawyer, every judge, every public-spirited citizen will want to consult this fascinating book, because it tells us what is legally right and legally wrong, how to judge our governments, our societies, our United Nations and ourselves. According to the first review by the former UN High Commissioner for Human Rights Bertrand Ramcharan, de Zayas co-authored and co-edited International Human Rights Monitoring Mechanisms in 2009. United Nations independent expert. In January 2008, the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights placed his name on the public list of candidates for special procedures of the UN Human Rights Council. In 2011, the Office of United Nations independent expert on the promotion of a democratic and equitable international order was established by Human Rights Council Resolution 18/6. In 2012, de Zayas was elected as the independent expert by the Human Rights Council after being nominated by the President of the Council, Laura Dupuy. He presented his first report to the UN Human Rights Council at its 21st session in September 2012, calling for uniform application of international law. On November 2, 2012, he presented his interim report to the UN General Assembly in New York. Doc. A. 67 277. On 10 September 2013 he presented his second report to the Human Rights Council AHRC 2438 and, in October 2013 his second report to the GAR A. 68 284 to the UN General Assembly exploring initiatives and enforcement mechanisms to further advance a democratic and equitable international order. On September 10, 2014, his third report, AHRC 2751, to the Council, and on October 27, 2014, he presented his third report to the General Assembly on the right to self-determination. In the press release issued the following day, he stated, "The realization of the right of self-determination is essential to maintaining local, regional and international peace and must be seen as an important conflict prevention strategy." In 2015, the US-based magazine of Global Politics, Foreign Policy, consulted with a UN independent expert on the application of the right to self-determination in the Indonesian region of West Papua. On 10 September 2015 he presented his fourth report to the Council on the adverse human rights impacts of free trade and investment agreements on a democratic and equitable international order, and on October 26, 2015 to the General Assembly on the issue of investor-state dispute settlement. The main observations of these reports were reported by news outlets such as Reuters, The Guardian, The Huffington Post, Russia Today, and The Independent. During his mandate, he addressed multiple contemporary world issues, welcoming the Arms Trade Treaty and urging states to regulate not only trade but also production of arms. For the 2013 World Water Day, he stated that, with the growth of the world population, the global climate change and the need for a greater healthy environment, access to water resources has become a crucial condition for the realization of a democratic and equitable international order. For 2013's International Earth Day, he observed, "When we pollute the earth and waste resources, we violate the rights of future generations and undermine an international order based on democratic participation and equitable sharing of the planet's wealth." He argues that a change of paradigm is necessary to achieve a just international order. This vision can be achieved by respecting the United Nations Charter as the world constitution, by applying international law uniformly and not la carte. An international democratic order is one where all peoples have the opportunity to participate in global decision-making. We must build on the principles of self-determination, sovereignty, and respect for national identities and universal human dignity. He proposed reforms in the international arena, including in the UN Security Council and the General Assembly, while also stressing that the riches of the planet must be equally shared and not controlled by a few countries or cartels. Fair trade is possible, as a transfer of knowledge and technical cooperation based on mutual benefit, pointing to the international financial crisis as an indicator of inequality in the international order, and calling for transparency and accountability in the markets, emphasizing that markets cannot be the private playground of financial bankers, and instead need to understand the role as a public responsibility. In 2015, following a press release, de Zayas urged trade negotiators to address the Doha Round commitments to promote equal and fair trade at the 10th Ministerial Conference in Nairobi, Kenya, which was reported by India's The Hindu. He has also called for the abolition of investor-state dispute settlement arbitrations that accompany investment agreements, stating, "Far from contributing to human rights and development, ISDS has compromised the state's regulatory functions and resulted in growing inequality among among states and within them. The Guardian published his op-ed on adverse human rights impacts of free trade and investment agreements. Throughout his mandate period, de Zayas has lectured on subjects related to his mandate at various academic institutions including the University of Leiden, the University of Leuven, the University of Geneva, the Harvard University, the University of Nottingham, the University of Middlesex, the University of Geneva, and Fachhochschule Zurich. Literary endeavors. Apart from his scholarly work in the fields of history and law, de Zayas has published poetry in English, French, German, Spanish, and Dutch, has translated the poetry of Rainer Maria Rilke into English, French, and Spanish, and has translated works by Joseph van Eyck and Orff and Hermann Hesse into English. As a member of the International Rainer Maria Rilke Society of Sierre, Switzerland, de Zayas published the first English-language translation of Rilke's Larrenopfer, 90 poems dedicated to Rilke's homeland of Bohemia and his home city of Prague. With this book, Zayas opened a new facet of Rilke research. Rilke as Heimatdichter, or poet of the homeland, poète du terroir, spanning Rilke's early poetry characterized by enthusiasm for the beauties and the history of his homeland through Rilke's final poetic testament, more than 400 poems in French, dedicated to the Valais in Switzerland, Rilke's Wahlheimat, where he spent the last years of his life at the Château de Musou in Sierre and where he is buried in nearby Raron. Hitherto, Rilke had been understood primarily as a metaphysical poet, as a poet's poet, but he had not been seen as a homeland poet. Zayas has lectured and published on Rilke's search for a sense of belonging and his grateful attachment to a landscape and to the real people who live there. Zayas has lectured on Rilke in Austria, Germany, Switzerland and Canada. On May 2, 2011, he delivered a lecture at the Salon du Livre de Genève on Rilke, Poète de la Heimat. He has published in the literary journal of the Pen Club Suisse Roman Le Rescapé in 2007-08. A member of International PEN since 1989, he was Secretary-General of the Centre Suisse Romand of Pen Club in 2002-06, and its President 2006-10. 2010-13 he was a member of the Centre's Executive Committee and in 2013 was again elected President. Zayas was coordinator of the three Swiss Pen Centres Switzerland 2008-10. And again 2013-14. De Zayas served for 15 years as president of the United Nations Society of Writers, Geneva. He was the founder of the UN Literary Review Extempore, which has published 25 issues. In October 2011 he was re-elected editor-in-chief of Extempore. On January 21, 2011, the 15th annual Extempore Salon was held in Geneva. In honor of the Whistler Olympics, Zayas read out his poem, Skiing, also published in the February 2010 UN Special, and in the Spring 2010 issue of the UBC literary journal, Esoteric. On October 14, 2014, the UN Library in Geneva celebrated the 25th anniversary of the United Nations Society of Writers with a special event devoted to literature and peace. De Zayas has been a member of the Société Genevoise des Écrivains since 2008 and a member of the Société des Écrivains Valaisans since 2013. Prizes. De Zayas received the Ehrengabe zum Georg Dehio Prize in Esslingen in 1980, the Human Rights Award of the Danube-Swabian Society of the United States and Canada in 1985, the VDA Culture Prize in Weimar in 1996, the Plakette für Verdienst für das Selbstbestimmungsrecht in Berlin in 1997, the Humanitas Ring in Frankfurt expert in 1998, the Dr. Walter Eckhart and Gabi für Zeitgeschichtsforschung from Ingolstadt Research Institute for Contemporary History in 2001, the East Prussian Cultural Prize in Leipzig in 2002, the ANC Scholarly Excellence Award in Los Angeles in 2003, a Human Rights Prize in Munich in 2004. On December 10, 2007, the Menschenrechtspreis of the Volksgruppe der Donauschwaben in Stuttgart, Germany. On July 26, 2008, de Zayas was awarded the Cultural Prize of the City of Geislingen for his Rilke and Hesse translations. De Zayas was awarded the Educators Award 2011 by the Teacher and Civil Society Organization Canadians for Genocide Education on March 31, 2011, at the University of Toronto, Canada. CGE is a coalition of some 50 Canadian associations of Armenians, Bosnians, Croats, Cypriots, Germans, Greeks, Indigenous peoples, Jews, Kosovars, Macedonians, Sinti, Roma, Serbs, Tamils, Ukrainians, and others. CGE aims at ensuring education on ethnic cleansing, genocide and crimes against humanity committed against a variety of victims.